Welcome to the story of my life. You might see a cattail. I wasn't even going to say that, but there went the cat. You might hear a baby screaming in the background. You can hear the bathwater running for child number one who's sick, and then child number two has probably snuck off to find whatever candy he can in the house because he knows everyone else is completely preoccupied with what they're trying to handle, such as me handling making a video when, look, see, there's the cat again. Hi, Violet. We're trying to make a video when it's bedtime on Sunday night. But that's the reality of things, and I know that you can think of how many times in life your classroom is going to look like this too, and you have to just sort of work through it and figure out what to do. So element number 24 is part of the lesson segments enacted on the spot, and it is what will I do to engage students? Engaging students is about noticing initially when they're not engaged, because if you're not even aware of what engagement looks like and you take false evidence of engagement for real evidence, then your estimation of engagement will be false. And I'm going to put the cat down because otherwise she's going to constantly be in the camera. So engagement actually has to do with truly being a part of the interaction in the classroom and part of the conversation, even if you're not verbalizing as a student. So when you see students that are engaged, you may think that engagement equates with students who are watching you and making eye contact and nodding at the right times. Well, sometimes as we get older and we're really good students, we have a tendency to find a way to look like we're engaged when we're really not. So just bear that in mind. And think back initially, as I start to talk about this, to the scenarios in both of your classes, Wednesday and Tuesday, Thursday, where I've already maybe used some of these tactics. And I hope that you've seen evidence of that in my teaching. So from your list for your reproducibles that are beneath this post on the video blog, the teacher evidence, this is a very short element. So the teacher evidence is the teacher notices when specific students or groups of students are not engaged. You just have to be aware. This discrete skill is not talking about what do you do to engage students. Remember how there is a difference between a lot of these skills that is so minute that it's hard to break down unless you really look at the evidence pieces. So make sure when you're writing your goals, you're not just writing, I'm going to work hard to engage students in class. No, this element, if you choose it, actually says, what do I do to notice when students are not engaged? So you should see a teacher noticing that when specific students or groups aren't engaged. The teacher will notice when the energy level in the room isn't very high, which I know in the Wednesday section we had a lot of opportunity to actually play with that observation that I made. I'm sure on Tuesday, Thursday's class this week, we'll have another chance to do that in there. And the teacher takes action to re-engage students. Notice again, that's not initially engaging them. That's another component of your lesson. But when you have to re-engage students, for example, some of the things we did in the Wednesday class are we stopped and had a 30-second stretch break is what we initially started to do. I suggested to students that they stand up when we did that stretching. I said you need to re-engage yourselves by maybe, are you listening? Are you looking? Are you doing something to move at the same time? If you're having a hard time focusing, making sure that you, when you're trying to re-engage the students, that you maybe even pick particular students that, again, the Wednesday class might remember those particular students who might be the least engaged, but maybe you could use a sense of humor with to re-engage them, appropriate humor, and maybe you can draw them back into the class that way. So there are lots of things you can do to re-engage once the class is maybe just sort of tiring of the topic, or maybe you've just not done a good job of keeping things interesting. So student evidence of you noticing when students are not engaged would include that students actually appear aware of the fact that the teacher is taking note of their level of engagement. So again, I think the Wednesday class, because it's so long, I think you're probably very aware of the fact that I'm noticing your level of engagement because I talked about it. I said, it's fine. We're going to be open about the fact that we have to keep things moving differently because it's a long time to be together. So Tuesday, Thursday class, I don't know if you've noticed yet that I'm aware of everyone's degree of engagement in the class. Sometimes when I see side conversations, or when I know that someone's kind of meandered off on a different internet site, or has worked ahead on a task or something. That's my job to notice that and find a way to re-engage you. So, and without, publicly humiliating a student, because sometimes that seems like the easiest way to do it, and that's not the appropriate way. So, student evidence, again, is students actually try to increase their level of engagement when prompted. So if I actually bring up something in the classroom and say, well, I'm kind of noticing that we're feeling a little, flat right now. Nobody's responded to my last couple of questions. People would shift in their seats and sort of sit up a little straighter and give some, maybe even verbal or just facial expression response to let me know that they know that I'm paying attention to their level of engagement. So, and when asked, the students in the class would explain that the teacher expects high levels of engagement. And I do think that any students that I've had would tell you that I do expect you to be on top of things and attending to the class topics and information, but that I work just as hard as you do during class to make sure that things don't drag and that you have a good reason to pay attention. So those are some things from a higher ed level that are effective and things that you need to talk about. But there was another note that came from the book that, again, you're not required to have. And within that book, it talks about not only using verbal prompts, but using proximity control. So you might see a teacher noticing a low level of engagement in a space, and they're going to wander near to that area where the engagement is low. Maybe just eye contact. Or questioning of a student, which I think is probably real natural to you to ask someone a question if you think they're not on task. So, and then additionally, they suggest using a 3-card system, a red, yellow, green card. So if you say, engagement check, or for elementary students, you actually come up with something like, are you with me? And then they have to hold up their card. They'll hold up a green if they're really with you, yellow if they're kind of, spacing out or confused, and then red if they're like, we need a break. Then you can take just a quick survey of the classroom and see if there are an abundance of reds, then you know that you have gone on too long. Now, I don't know that I'm going to give you all 3 colors of cards, because I don't want to know always if you're thinking I don't want to learn this, but I tend to do a thumbs up or thumbs to the middle or thumbs down, and I may use that as a check for understanding, which is not the skill, or as a check for engagement. So all of those examples are ways that you can actually notice when students are not engaged and then attempt to re-engage them. Thank you.